Hi everyone, welcome to the New South Wales Water Stories series, sharing experiences in delivering water sensitive city approaches across coastal, regional and urban areas in New South Wales. My name is Tony Webber. I've been involved in CRC activities for a number of years in various forms, and I currently work at Alluvium Consulting as the National Lead for Water Modelling. I'll be facilitating today's conversation. We've been working with the Cooperative Research Centre for Water Sensitive Cities to develop this series to better understand the challenges and opportunities and values in implementing water sensitive city solutions. In today's episode, we'll explore the process by which regional local government has looked at implementing a water sensitive approach to managing their local government areas and the lessons that they've learned on the way. I'm joined today by Prue Tucker. Prue's been working for Mid Coast Council for a number of years, and I've had the pleasure of working with Prue on a number of occasions, and I've been particularly impressed with how Mid Coast Council have implemented an approach to water sensitive cities. Hi Prue.
Hi, g'day, how you going?
Prue, I just wonder if you could tell us a bit about your water sensitive story and where you've come from and where you see it going.
So my story starts back in 2006 when I started work here, and my job was to put together the water quality improvement plan for Wallace Smith and Mile Lakes. And as part of that plan, the real focus was on estuary health, and the centre of the plan was identifying what the estuary's needs were. Now, where I live in Foster, we have this incredible estuary that we're required to look after, and it's called Wallace Lake. And Wallace Lake has got fishing and oyster growing and tourism and all sorts of activities and needs that we all recognise as needing good water quality. So as part of this planning process, we were able to use some really rigorous science, some excellent modelling for our urban catchments, and identify what the exact needs were for that estuary. So it's a really great platform for developing a development control plan or a local environment plan, because with that robust science, you've got a really defendable position for undertaking those actions. So from the water quality improvement plan, we were able to start putting some of the actions from the plan in place. And I was charged with the job looking after the urban spaces. And me, the focus was really on developing that development control plan and local environment plan and getting some action on new developments and redevelopment within our catchment. The other aspects to the work that I started doing after the plan was adopted was to retrofit existing urban areas with water sensitive urban design so that we could claw back on some of those locations where the water quality outcomes weren't looking that great for the estuary. So I guess that kind of combination of engagement and policy and on-ground works was really the mandate that I had to make some changes on ground for a water-sensitive approach to managing things better at our council.
The things that I found quite interesting was that you had some fairly strong drivers for change, and I wonder if you would like to talk a little bit about those drivers.
Sure. I guess before my time in 1997, there was a hepatitis A outbreak in Wallace Lake. Now, this is within living memory of lots of the people who live around here, and that hepatitis A outbreak had cascading effects for tourism, for fishing, for oyster growers, and on from that very sad event for the people who were sick during that time, we were able to develop a catchment plan for Wallace Lake, and also that gave us the impetus to develop other plans for other estuaries within our local government area. Then I guess as this kind of energy was happening in the catchment space, when the water quality improvement plan came into play and we had an opportunity to put one together, we kind of had this platform, I suppose, of interest and understanding of the drivers for protecting the estuary because of the flow-on effects felt firsthand by our community.
What are some of the key initiatives that you've implemented to sort of move towards a more water-sensitive city approach?
So one of the main things that we did as a result of the actions from the water quality improvement plan was build the the requirements for water sensitive design into our development control plan. And that was one of the big ticket items for our plan, because we wanted to see urban development not impacting any further on our estuary, but also look for opportunities to improve water quality where we could, and also estuary health. So what that meant was basically taking the science and turning it into policy, which sounds easy if you just say it like that, but there's a few steps on the way. And basically we had to put some controls into our development control plan, right from a single dwelling all the way through to a subdivision. So for a subdivision, we're already doing some good work in the space of reducing or preventing further harm of the estuary by putting the mutual beneficial effect target in place. But the new thing that we added into our DCP and was this: all development in our local government area was required to have some water sensitive targets met.
I think that's quite interesting and a little bit different from a lot of other local authorities, where they might have a threshold and it's the bigger stuff that really has to focus on, whereas in Mid-Coast it's been across the whole spectrum of development.
We identified in the plan that if you didn't attach yourself or put water sensitive design on those small developments, you would not only get an incremental decline in health of the estuary for those pre-approved subdivisions, but you'd also miss out on opportunities to improve, where we could hold the line pretty much with the new subdivisions, but for the newer stuff or the knockdown rebuilds, you're missing out on an opportunity. We started off with a template that we adapted from Sydney, and we sort of found in the first 5 years that approach was okay for a starting point, but there were lots of things that were nuanced for a smaller local government area like ours, one with different sort of circumstances. For example, we had the opportunity 5 years on to revise that policy and really bring in some of those nuances that were suitable to our local government area. With 5 years experience on board, we were able to make a lot of revisions to the DCP that helped us implement it in a smoother and more, I guess, a fair way. So we increased the clarity around the objectives for those development types. That was really helpful. It streamlined the process of putting a development application in, because people were clearer about what was required. The thing that we really focused on was getting feedback in that first 5 years from people who were using the DCP, and to take that, we took that really seriously. And for that 5 years, we collected all the examples of things that people found challenging, and we ended up changing the DCP to reflect those challenges, and that's really helped us and set us in good stead.
In terms of the issues that you've dealt with over the last 5 years and what you've learned from, there must be some positives in that you've also been able to identify over those 5 years. And how do you think you'll build on those for the next 5 years?
So I guess one of the main things was listening to people's feedback and taking that feedback on board and taking everything people said seriously, because that helped us build a DCP that's easier to use. And I think continuing that conversation, and for them to see that we're making those changes that they're suggesting, or at least having a conversation with them about why we haven't made those changes, because there could be a good reason why we've put things in or out. So what we ended up doing is making revisions to the DCP so that there were key focus areas for single dwellings. Instead of applying the requirements for single dwellings right across our LGA without any consideration for their distance from the estuaries, we actually ended up focusing on the areas that were around estuaries so that we could manage the politics. It wasn't perfect from an ecological or estuary health point of view, but to maintain that DCP in its format that we wanted, then we needed to make some compromises. So I think that was a big lesson for us.
I think you brought up some interesting points there about, careful risk taking, thinking about the overall goal rather than trying to hit everything. I think that's important.
The number of times we would sit at the front counter and spend an hour with a consultant to try and explain the DCP, step them through the process, that effort it pays you back in spades in terms of their understanding of the requirements, and also the support that we get from them now and the relationships we've built with them, but also the protection of our policy. Because if we didn't manage it in that way, I expect that we would have had phone calls to the Mayor every second day, and we wouldn't have a policy to look to protect our estuary now.
What I see most about what you've done is that not only have you worked on the science, you've developed the planning, you've looked at implementation, but you've also evaluated your successes and failures, I suppose, and learnt from them. And from my perspective, I think you're the only region in Australia that can actually demonstrate that you've had a positive improvement in water quality in the estuary as well. And I wonder if you want to talk a bit about, your report card process and how you've used that.
So we, each year we release a report card on estuary health, and the estuary health indicators focus on chlorophyll, the amount of algae in the water, and sediment, and so the total suspended solids. We've got sites all across our estuaries, and there's one particular location in Morse Lake which receives the majority of water from the township or the urbanised area, and that had very poor water quality when we were putting together our water quality improvement plan. And what we've seen over the years is that it's not only maintained its water quality, there was one year where it actually improved, and then it's maintained its grade. Look, the fact that we've continued to develop in that catchment in sort of a fairly significant way, and we haven't seen a decline in the water quality in that location, is pretty positive. You can't make those direct links, but that overall pattern after 9 years of monitoring data, you can see that it hasn't gone down, which is good news.
I still think that is one of the very few examples in Australia that can say, look, we've been right through this process and we can demonstrate an improvement in water quality. What do you think about the future of, our water sensitive cities and the technologies? Is there stuff that is missing at the moment that we need further, research on or further understanding on?
For me, as a local council and one that's just focusing on getting things done, I guess it's the research that really backs us up, and that's the research we can't afford to do. So in the same way that the Water Quality Improvement Plan gave us the robust science to make the decisions we've got, we rely on other organisations like the CRC or bigger bodies to back us up with the implementation of that plan. We can't monitor every single bioretention that we put in and check that the water quality coming in out is improving. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to keep seeing come out of the industry, so that we can put our hand on our heart and say, these systems are working. We can't monitor ours, but we know overall that these systems are the right systems to put in place.